for February 16th, 2022. We've got our agenda set out so far, and item number 1 is our committee report. This is our vision, mission, and strategy initiative language. Matt, were you going to lead this? Oh, okay. We can do that. We'll move to, is that okay with the council to move to 3?
I shouldn't have said what I said. That's why you wanted to move it up. Yeah,
Okay, we'll go ahead and move to 3, and we'll put that, the discussion of the easement and encroachment licenses.
Sure.
You turned the mic on?
It's not on.
There we go. I'll start again. Good evening, everybody. In your packets last week, there should have been a copy of a staff report that I prepared and I sent to the city manager last week. And it's regarding a proposed ordinance for city consideration of easement encroachment requests. And this came up in a couple of ways. And since I've been here, I've had the need to review previous recorded subdivision plats. And I had noticed on some of them, while it's very common to have public utility easements or city easements recorded on subdivision plats, sometimes there's notes that say that people can construct what they call non-permanent structures within an encroachment, and that does not require city approval. And from my previous experience, we would always have a legal mechanism in place to protect the city from liability and be indemnified if people were to do that. And we would have a way for the people to actually have to request it, so we were notified of if and when it happened. In addition to that, I've also had several requests over the last few weeks of people actually wanting to encroach into easements. Typically, these are public utility easements, so the city is not the only interest holder in the easement. It could be the city, it could be the sewer district, it could be Rocky Mountain Power, it could be other jurisdictions like, UDOT or the county. But typically, these are for what we consider non-permanent structures, things like large storage sheds, sometimes structures a little bit bigger than that, but they're not considered permanent. We're not looking at house extensions or things like that. So what I've been saying to the residents is that, well, we really don't have a formal mechanism to even consider these at this point. And talking with Amy, we thought the best way to address it was to enter into what we're calling a revocable license agreement with people who want to build on an easement. So basically that would become an application form where the resident would tell us what they intend to do in terms of what kind of building they're putting in, and more particular, from my perspective, is what kind of foundation they're putting. Typically, we're looking at like a slab foundation or something like that, which really would not have much impact with regard to requiring deep excavations into an easement. So, like I said, we decided to put this license agreement together. We'd get the basic information from a resident. We would get all the technical details about what they want to do, how they want to do it. If there are any specific conditions we need to put in there, and something that came to mind is one of them wanted a deeper foundation than a slab would be. So the condition there would be, well, we want you to hand dig the footing openings first to make sure that we're obviously not impacting any infrastructure, and if we're near it, that we're far enough away so there is no impact. So again, I said, I bring to the council's attention, we did have 3 requests at this point, and one of them is a pure city easement, which we don't have anything in right now. So there really would be no issue with us allowing that encroachment. The other ones, I haven't confirmed it yet because we didn't get that far into the process, but the residents have been told that if the sewer district approves it and the city approves it, they still have to get the approvals of all the other agencies who have interest in the easement. And from what the residents have been telling me, that's been a very simple process where some of the particular things, the water company and Rocky Mountain Power just send a letter. But I know under our ordinances, I don't have the authority to do that, and I certainly don't have the authority to impose any kind of liability on the city where there's no protection or indemnification. So we did present this to the Special Sewer District Board the other evening. Councilman Swap heard most of the presentation, or all the presentation. They agreed that this is something they would consider going into the future, and they would handle it via resolution on a case-by-case basis. I think in this case, Amy, that we have to have an ordinance in place.
Just a resolution.
Okay. So that would make it a little easier. So we can have the same approach here. If the council wants to pursue this, we can entertain these on a case-by-case basis. Staff certainly is willing to make a recommendation in the affirmative or the negative if we think so, but we present all the information to the council. You can ultimately make the decision, and then we would record it internally and also provide a copy to the building department. So if people either go for permits, they'll know that we're permitting the encroachment, or conversely, if somebody sees something they think is encroaching and they go to register a complaint, they'll find out that the person actually had the permission to do it in the first place.
Can I ask a question? We did this is this what we did before when they were coming in and asked us to release the ground behind them?
For Sechrist Acres.
And so this is Sechrist as well. So is this a different
Well,
situation?
he's
This
talking
is
about
different.
in general. He's not
Okay.
talking about specifically
Yeah,
Sechrist Acres, right?
From what I understand, the council has vacated
Right.
vacated easements.
yes.
But we don't have a mechanism for allowing someone to encroach an easement.
Okay.
And again, holding the city harmless and indemnifying us in case anything did happen that we wouldn't be responsible. So obviously.
Just
if
wanted to understand the difference between
yes.
those two.
Yep. So I believe there's already been a process and a precedent for vacating or easements, but not encroachment.
Amy, I have a question regarding that actually. In the past, when we have vacated those easements, should we not have done that? Should we have done this instead?
That's just a policy question. You can do it either way. It depends on whether or not you think you might need the easement. Like with Sechrist Acres, that was a pretty huge easement, and like in the past with the last two, the council determined that you didn't need all of that for conservation and drainage. This just has to do with, okay, if you ever are thinking that you need to run anything back there, that's what this is for. You keep it just in case, but you let the property owner, build, whatever that they are proposing, and this would be recorded, and attached to the property.
Okay, and that leads me to another question. Where in the past we have vacated in Sechrist Acres, have we already set the precedent there that really if a resident comes in and asks for vacating instead of encroachment, do we need to honor vacating the easement because we've already done that before in that area?
I think when you're looking at Sechrist Acres, I think it sets a little bit of a precedent because of why you guys did it for the last two. But across the city, no, I don't think that it sets a precedent where you're going to have to do it. You're just going to need to look at it, every situation differently, because you just never know what. You may need to keep an easement intact instead of vacating it.
Okay.
Yeah, Councilwoman, to your point, these also would affect conditions where we might already have existing infrastructure where we couldn't vacate the easement. So if we had a storm line or a sanitary line, and like I said, they wanted to encroach 5 feet over it to put a patio extension or shed, from the city's perspective, that's not necessarily detrimental to the condition of our infrastructure. So if it's something the council wants to consider, that'd be fine. If there are easements that are just dedicated to the city per se, and we have no infrastructure in there, and we have, based on staff investigation and looking at future planning, if there's no need to put infrastructure there, we would certainly be willing to support a vacation of the easement also. But generally in a vacation, people just want to have access to the property. When we're talking about an encroachment, that they want to build something over it, because you can vacate an easement sometimes, but you may not meet the setbacks even if you vacated it, so they would still need some other kind of permission to do so.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Just want to thank Ed and stay up here. One of the things I've observed in some of our subdivisions that have been platted out, there are 10-foot utility easements around the entire property. Not a very logical use of easements. Usually you have them run along the back property line and the front property line. But we do have subdivisions that have them 10-foot corridors around the whole property on 1.5 acre lots. So it really does limit what the residents can do with their property. And some of these don't have any utilities down there. It's just an easement. And because it's a utility easement, we have to say no. And so this is not giving up property, kind of like the Seacrest Acres one where it's an open space one. This is, usable property that's not being used, but we might want to keep it just for future drainage or other consideration. And so this license would allow them to do that, so.
So where this is a land use situation, but we have the council that'll be reviewing these. Is that how we have it lined up?
I would defer that interpretation to Amy. I don't know whether it's a.
So it would go to the planning commission first, and they would send it up to you guys with their recommendation. And really, why Ed and I wanted to bring this to you guys is so that you could look it over, see if there's any other additional things that you think we may need to add in that we missed. Ed gave it to me. It's pretty comprehensive. I added a couple of things that, like I added in that the property owner shall bear the cost of recordation, so that when they have to go take it and get it recorded against their lot, they're the ones paying for it. Or if we need them to remove something and then they don't, we have the ability to remove it, and then they will pay us for the cost of that removal. And if they haven't paid that within a certain period of time, that we can then place a lien on the property and foreclose on that lien.
But this will only happen at their request, right?
Correct.
No, yeah,
Yes.
if they want to do the
Right.
encroachment, then that's part of all of us giving them okay to do so.
And again, some cases will be much easier than others, because again, some of these public utility easements, other utilities may not be so willing to vacate their rights, so they may want to maintain the easement. So we wouldn't be able to vacate it anyway unless
And
we
how
had
do we
permission
know
from
who's
other-
back there? I mean, how do we know who has, something that, from the easement? I mean, how do you know if Rocky Mountain's back there or?
Well, typically, if it's recorded as a public utility easement, the
okay.
language is broad, that it's for any and all utility uses.
So they would have to
Where
contact
sometimes,
everyone?
like, there was one today I was reviewing, and I asked them just dedicate it as a storm easement and a sanitary sewer easement. And that would just be for the city's benefit and for the SSD's benefit. And anybody else who would want to use that for another purpose, they'd have to come to the city and ask to get rights into that easement.
I have one other question. On the license agreement under recitals B, it says property owner has requested permission to encroach onto the encroachment property 5 feet to install and maintain a utility shed on slab foundation. Is this just an example?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I had drafted one up for Amy to see. This was based on a specific request. Yeah, so
Okay.
that should have come out. I apologize for that. It would be tailored specifically to each case.
Okay.
And again, there's also zoning issues for them to consider. So they wouldn't necessarily be able to encroach 10 feet on an easement if it goes to the property lines. They would have to get some interpretation from Sherry to make sure that's okay from a zoning perspective, because you can't build certain structures that close to a property line.
So is it just that area of this document that will be specific to each case? The rest of this is language that will stay?
There will be a general description of what they want to do, but then the attachments will actually obviously have a section of the recorded plat showing the particular property and outline where the easement is. And then we would ask the residents to provide a very, very basic, we'll call it a site plan, but basically giving us the information for what they want to construct. And then we'll just sort of have them show it on that actual plot plan, so you'd be able to get a view of how big it is and how far they're looking to encroach. And then the third part would be if there's special conditions, like I mentioned, if we had to have them hand dig or blue stake or whatever we think would be necessary to allow them to do this.
Okay. Thank you.
Ed, do we need language in here that specifies the depth of the concrete, or we're not allowed to have pole barns because you need to be below the frost line? Or?
Yeah, I mean, that's probably most of the case, and also generally, if you have a 10-foot easement, there's nothing we wouldn't necessarily know where within the easement people had laid their utilities if they're there, so we'd have to identify that. And if the utilities are not within, several feet of the encroachment line, you might be, you could quite easily put a 3.5 or 4 foot foundation, and it won't have any impact on what's there now or in the future. You just want to be careful that if you're doing something like that and you're over an existing utility, even if it's several feet under, you want to make sure that there's no issue with the vertical pressures having any negative impact on whatever's under there. And again, that would be more geared towards a storm sewer or a sanitary sewer. Power lines, things that would typically not be affected by that kind of construction.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the council?
Oh, none for me. I appreciate you guys putting this together, by the way. I think it's good to have good language, legal language.
It always, again, it comes to a simple question. Somebody calls me and asks if they could do it, and I say, well, I don't have the authority to do it, so I'll have to bring it to the council.
No.
And you get all kind of anecdotal evidence, or people say, well, I called the city and they said it was okay, or my neighbor did it and whatever, but no one has any real
Yeah, this
indication. And
this
again,
really
it's
gets us-
more, it's to give the resident obviously an opportunity to construct the thing the way they want. But again, to me, it's more important that we make sure the city's held harmless in case there's
I
any kind of
agree,
damage.
and I think this gets us away from those handshake deals that we've had in the past. So appreciate that.
I just have one question. Is this, have you had a chance to let the planning commission look at this as well?
No, because, well, I'll leave that to Amy's discretion, because we thought, at least my
This
thinking
was
is
last
more
week
of a
that we
legal.
got it all put together, so we haven't had a chance that
Just,
he,
just in case there's some additional input that they might have, I'm thinking that,
Yeah, again, that would be up to how the council wants to, how the council would like to implement this kind of a process.
and we could
because-
see about taking it to him next meeting and discussing it with him. We just wanted to know how you guys were feeling as to whether or not this was something that you would even be willing to entertain, because
kind of sounds like,
Yeah, because going forward, at least when new plats get recorded, I can certainly make sure that there's no blanket language allowing people to do this without having any kind of permission. So that's one thing that was unusual to me, to see that was actually recorded on some plats. And I've actually, looking into this a little further, there are actually some city ordinances which allow people to do that by ordinance, but again, there's no means then to indemnify the city if case there's some kind of damage or problem.
Yeah, I think we're trying to tighten up all things, so this is good.
Yes.
Okay.
So,
Any other questions? Perfect. I think the council then will review, and then we'll possibly get this to the planning commission. They can probably take a look at it as well, give their opinions on it, but let's get back. I guess we'll put it before the council in another meeting and see where we stand with it. Would that
Very
be
good.
correct?
yep, sounds good.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
Appreciate
Mayor.
it, Ed. Okay, we'll move on. Which one did you want to go to next, Matt?
Let's go ahead and do the statement and the vision
Okay,
statement.
all right.
And Emily, can you see if it'll share off the podium? I hope it will. And if not, I just have to restart my computer. Let me just restart. Oh, you can see it. Okay. Sorry about that. We've got a lot of things to share, so I want to make sure it's good. So, just wanted to come before the council and report from back our strategic retreat. We had an assignment to review and kind of wordsmith the vision statement, mission statement, and the strategic initiatives. The ad hoc committee that was formed included Councilmember Morris, Planning Commission member Andrew Reyna, and Ed Mignon, and myself, and we worked through that over a handful of meetings. And by and large, this kind of shows the red line approach that we did with a couple notes that I'd taken from the strategic session that we had. By and large, our vision and mission statement were pretty much not changed. A little bit of tweaking here and there from suggestions that were discussed in the strategic plan, or strategic retreat. And then we looked to wordsmith the strategic initiatives. And there's a bit more red in that one, partially because your moderator was a horribly evil person and only gave you about 35 minutes to do it. And so as we took the input that all those who participated in our retreat, we kind of modified some of those. The biggest one that you see is the one that started out as fiscal sustainability. It was kind of plain, succinct, and we beefed that up substantially. The other one, a couple of the other changes we did was, as you can see, we added some action words on the front: define community development, strengthen community identity, emphasize economic development, and champion fiscal responsibility. And as we did that, we felt that really gave us some action items of these are our strategic initiatives. This is what we're working towards as a city. Some of the other changes are a little more nuanced and language-driven. Review and refine is now revise. We're going to go and revise it accordingly. We don't have a development code. We have a city code, so we switched that to the correct language. And some of the other items that we looked at to really, hopefully, embody some of the discussions that were held by the bigger body that attended the strategic retreat. And so what we wanted to do is bring this to the council, allow you to kind of mull it over. We would bring that up to another council meeting with any feedback from this body in order for the council to adopt it. And so this is kind of the preliminary saying this is what the ad hoc committee has, and allow the council to just take a look at it and make any additional changes as necessary. So I know we've got a couple other people who are in the audience that were for the strategic session, so it was good to have that there. But just to see if there's any questions, Nina and Ed were on this committee, so they can step up and answer as well as I, if their council has any specific issues or concerns.
Well, for me, I worked on fiscal responsibility when we were doing the breakout teams, and that's a really good definition. That's exactly what I was trying to say in all of those words that I used. So I think that's awesome.
I give all the credit to Ed on that. He came up with that entire paragraph.
Good job, Ed.
Good
That
job,
was
Ed.
awesome. Because that talks about not only what we're doing now, but in the future and enhancing it. It's good job.
It really, and he did a great job. I was about to mention that Ed was driving that, and it really encapsulates some of the other things that we took out from the strategic initiatives that the council had previously set in the draft strategic, the transparency, the efficiency, and really sets it up in that way. So Ed ended up being our kind of big wordsmith, and sometimes we had to
Maintain,
kind of pull back
enhance,
the
and
rein.
invest. Awesome.
Yeah.
Really? Uh-oh. I think it looks great.
Well, it's nice to get it put together
On
and
one
see it in,
page.
yeah, and see it in words that we can read and review and make sure that we got it all right, that the council's in agreement with everything that's on here, because this is going to be posted on our website. This will be what we'll be living and dying by. So I think it's really important we get it right. So.
Can we just say living by? Do we have to say we're going to die by it?
It's
We wanna
going
make
on
sure.
Rob's tombstone.
It's pretty important.
His howdy
We
tombstone.
agree.
So, any other comments as we get a chance to look this over. I know this is kind of our first round of looking at it,
And,
so.
and what the goal would be is possibly on March 2nd, have this as an action item on the council. So if there was any modifications or changes, we could just amend it there with discussion by the council.
I think I'd make a recommendation, if I may, on this. If the council has any concerns or anything they want to change, or just as you're reading through it, just let's send an email to Matt and let him review it, and then we can put them together and we can
I
talk
agree,
about that.
yeah, that's
That'd be
great.
okay?
Yep.
You guys okay with that? So, because I think it's going to be something that if you just see something that just isn't quite exactly the way we want, we may be able to tweak a little bit more, but it looks really good. And we appreciate you guys taking the time to do that. Thank you.
Good to hear.
Great.
So,
Good
thank you.
job.
All right. With that, Mayor, we're ready to talk and address a little bit about the Weber School District's proposal. This is a follow-up to our work session on the 2nd, and specifically for some of the requests for information that came out. And one of the things that was talked about in that meeting was a field trip. We'll talk about that at the end, but I didn't have my experts on hand previously, and so I wanted them to address between James and Brock. They'll address kind of in summary. You've got a lot of information here. They'll kind of do a little summary and personal viewpoints on from the staff viewpoints and how these programs operate, what some of the challenges are. So they're going to address the first three: the basketball program stats, the current facility usage, and if we were to expand or get some kind of recreation facility, what programs would be possible. So I'm going to turn that over to James and Brock to tag team on that. So.
Hello, and
Hi.
we could be here. And I'm gonna have to excuse my mask. I was sick yesterday, and I don't want anyone else to get what I had yesterday. So where to start? Basketball is of the many programs that we run. Basketball is probably our biggest, and we don't quite have the facilities to run what we're currently offering, and it's limiting our ability to expand. I mean, it's also limiting us right now as it is. Last year we ran basketball during the week, and that was a very positive thing for the families that participated and the coaches. And as we're constantly looking to evaluate our programs and see how we can improve them, several of the coaches that I asked liked going to a weeknight program. And so when we tried to run it this year, we weren't able to, based on the facilities that we had available to us and the number of participants that wanted to play basketball. It kind of came down to either running games during the week and on Saturdays and not offering practices, or capping the program at a certain number, both of which wasn't ideal. And so we ended up going back to running the games on Saturdays and having practices during the week. Now, even then, as it is, even with our practices during the week, we're still a little bit tight. A lot of the teams are practicing. We got about 4 teams in the gym during our 6 o'clock hour, and then with our older kids that are larger in stature, we're trying to space them out a little bit so that they have enough physical space to move around and practice in.
So James, where are your games and practices now? What facilities are we now using?
So games are played at Rocky Mountain Junior High. We
Okay.
start at 8 o'clock in the morning and we get done around 5 o'clock. And then,
Oh, it's
yeah,
here.
jump to that.
Great.
Well, at Quest, we start at 8 and we go until 7 o'clock at Quest.
Wow, okay.
And that's one of the struggles that we've had, Kim, is the program is growing, and obviously we had some setbacks. You can see that in statistics as far as when COVID hit. But one of the things we're struggling with is we're losing facilities. Quest kind of dropped a bombshell on us this year. We normally are able to practice and play games at Quest. This year, we were limited to only Saturday because of Quest's growth in their athletic programs.
Wow, okay.
So you can kind of see, is it above that? Is it the same sheet as that one?
It's on
Yeah,
the
right
same
above that, the chart there that shows kind of the schedule that James has listed out, you can see what
Right.
we used to have access to and what we currently have access to. And that's been quite a struggle.
Let me ask you a few questions on the access. Country View and Canesville, and Hooper Elementary, we don't have access to those schools at all?
We do not.
Country View will give you, what, 3:15 to 4?
Oh,
Country View didn't return my phone calls.
That was actually.
I
last
mean,
year.
that's, yeah, so Country View didn't even acknowledge anything. And Hooper also said no outright.
The school district's policy leaves it up to the administration
Right.
to really determine. In other school districts, they have a little bit different protocol for that, but they allow it to the administrators, and so we really
if there's
rely-
not a contract,
Yes.
then it's up to the
And as
administrators.
they rotate administrators, that's why we get nervous every time they bring a new principal to Rocky, which fortunately doesn't happen very often. But when they do, we are right in there to try to cultivate a relationship to make sure that we can kind of continue. So
I also noticed that Russell Gym isn't on this list, or we're not using that anymore,
Gym.
or Thomason Gym.
yeah, that is okay. Where it's a private facility, obviously the way things were through the pandemic, we obviously stayed back. That's a lot to ask of a private residency. Hey,
Sure.
we allow the whole city to come in and practice. They do have some parameters there that the county placed on them when they allowed them to come in. We can't run games there, and they can only have
Right.
a certain amount of participants. So it's one practice facility. The challenge to that is that they also have a lot of AAU and club that like to contract with the facility.
Okay.
When we press a little bit, we can carve out some time, but it is a little bit of a challenge. And it doesn't do it helps because it's one gym, but I think they max out. I think they can have 8 cars parked, if I remember correctly. Craig told me.
Yeah,
They have-
parking's pretty tight over there.
And so, which we also facilitate a restroom because there's no restroom facility in there. So we actually bring a porta potty in and put it outside and cone it. And then, of course, there's some snow removal and whatnot. So it is a viable option. Long-term, it's just a little bit of a struggle. And who knows when they decide, hey, this is just so much to handle having just so many people come into our residence every night.
Okay. And then on West Haven Elementary, I notice only one time slot. Is that because that's all the school will allow?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Any questions
Yeah.
on the numbers?
Yes.
It fluctuates a little bit. It looks like almost like the program doesn't grow. We used to have what we call a team league. Your husband's coached in the team league before.
Loved it.
Loved
Yep.
it. It was awesome.
Misses it.
Yeah, miss it, right? Right.
Yeah.
It was great because what we implemented was there's recreation and then there's competitive basketball.
Right.
We have a lot of people don't like to be in the recreation format because it doesn't quite fit their needs. They want to kind of come in with a team and compete. But we have a hard time with that because we can't let somebody just come in and run the gauntlet and just destroy everybody. So we run drafts. And so that naturally makes teams, well, are we ready to move to the next level? And then they go to Weber County and they get destroyed because they are not the Utah Select and they are not, complete athletics. And so then some start migrating back. So we developed what we call the team league. And they had parameters, had to be inside our umbrella, us in Roy City. And they were able to bring a team in. And it was very, very popular. We had a lot of teams. It was exactly what we wanted. We retained those people and those participants, but in the long run, we don't have the facility to be able to function with it anymore. So we had to cut that. So you see a little bit of a drop in the numbers. But even amid that, our boys basketball actually has continued to grow. Even during the pandemic, our boys basketball did grow. So it's only a matter of time before it continues. But the big issue that we have is just the pure lack of facility. Our goal is to try to provide, a safe, a fun, family-oriented program, that's, we feel it's imperative. I'm sure you feel it's imperative for youth activities. But we also want to provide the best program we can possibly provide. And in comparison, we have cities around us that provide great programs. and they have more facility than what we do have. And so our hope is that we can kind of forge something, some kind of relationship, be it with the school district or something, to be able to continue growing that program and providing the type of program that our goal is to provide. So it's just a little bit of a struggle without the facility to do that. And slowly, you have, teams that can't get the right time, it doesn't match, and they end up going and paying for time at the Roy Complex. And we feel like that is a disservice for what we're trying to provide, because they shouldn't have to do that. And so,
Can I ask a fiscal question about the school district, or is that?
We might get to that in a little bit, right?
Wanna
We'll
fire
talk about
away?
fiscal.
I think we'll get there, but go.
go ahead.
Okay, so we charge for the athletic program, and we charge for the basketball program, right?
Yes.
We have a fee. And so that's okay with the school districts, that we take the gym and we have a fee for the people to pay to us. Do you see what I mean? It's in the school, a Weber County school gym, but we're using it and they're paying the fee to us, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Say that last part again.
We're not making any money off
No,
the program.
I know we're not making any money, but it's okay. What I'm trying to say is, it's a school, we're charging money, it's okay for us to collect money using the school. Is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can continue to receive all of our registration monies and continue to use the school district's facility.
Because one thing that I have been involved with in the last couple of years is dance. And we have been along to every single school, so just saying that Saturday is dance day, so that would be another opportunity. And then, Ryan, this might be a question for you. If we did this, how does that show up in our assets? I mean, because it's not actually our asset, but it is an asset, so how does that work?
That's a great question. 'Cause
Thank you.
It would really be owned by the school district, but we would have intangible, it would be an
An intangible asset. Okay, I was just wondering how that would look on a sheet.
I have some questions on the numbers there.
Yes.
So I don't know how you guys call this out, short courts versus full court, but it looks like if we had this second gymnasium, we paid for that, we would get use of the second and the primary gymnasium, which gives us, looks like 4 short courts or 2 full courts, depending on the age playing.
Yes.
So what does that do as far as freeing up time? I mean, are we going to have extra courts at that point with our current numbers? Is that going to have us pull back from the elementary that's only given us 45 minutes? What do you project with the 4 short courts or the 2 full courts?
Either. That's a good question. It would open up, it would create more time for the teams to be able to practice.
So we give additional practice. So
Yeah.
say this was built right now today and we had those courts right now, what would that do for our athletic program, specifically to basketball?
I think the first thing that we would look at doing is taking a situation where we have 4 teams in, like Rocky Mountain, for instance, and we have some undesirable times. I think we would try to open that up. Currently, with our current model, it just relieves a little bit of the pressure.
Right.
So we'd be taking those, we'd probably be looking at running 2 teams in each gym. So we would be running 4 teams an hour on 2 courts at the junior high, take the 2 over here and go to 2. So we'd be practicing 6 teams an hour instead of 4 teams an hour, giving them more space. Now, so currently that's what it'll do. Obviously, long term, as we feel, we might have to start adding more teams in there to be able to make that work. But I think that what it does for us currently is we probably would have had an entirely different model for recreation as a whole this year. We probably would have stayed to the 2 games per week and then utilize some of our Saturday time where we have so many courts. We would utilize a little bit more of our Saturday time, run the games twice per week like we did before when it was very favorable. I don't know if any of you ever have experienced, recreation basketball Saturday versus midweek, but it's very popular to have it during the week because it opens the Saturdays for family time, for skiing, for a lot of other things, and also
Soccer.
opens up a lot of soccer, yes, because there's so many multi-sport athletes nowadays, right? And so but it really just relieves a lot of the current pressure, a lot of the pressure that they feel at Rocky, because they feel it. The janitors definitely feel it when there are that many kids in their facility every night. And so it really kind of enables us to spread that out, give a higher quality practice time so you don't have a million voices going on at the exact same time when you're trying to give instruction. it's just a night and day difference for us.
Can I add to that, Brock, if you don't mind? At Rocky Mountain Junior High, there are 2 marked courts and 4 teams practicing. So only 2 of the teams get to practice on marked courts. The other 2 teams do not. And so to me, I mean, I'm not a coach, but I live with one. That would be a big issue to the coaches, is trying to take turns with the marked areas. So,
And sometimes go out and mark free throw lines for them, so they
Yeah.
know where to shoot a free throw, and so, yes.
yeah, I hear the complaints, so I recognize
You might have
that
experienced
no,
it once or
it's-
twice.
Yeah,
maybe
no,
once
and-
or twice.
Like I say, and often when we're trying to arrange the teams, you know, I'll get to the gym. I'll say, all right, coach, you're at this hoop. Coach, you're at that hoop. Coach, you're at that hoop. Coach, you're at that hoop. You know, I'll walk out to the middle of the gym and say, okay, you guys have until about the middle of the line right here, and you have until this sideline right here, and that's your area. You know, and so they'll utilize it. They'll utilize it the best that they can. But you know, when you have 4 teams of 9 kids running around, you know, they kind of mesh into each other and run around. So it is very full at the gym right now, as it is based on what we have.
Another impact currently that we have is we were actually supposed to host our 7th grade basketball league this year. And we actually were unable to do that. We did not have any available time, and so Roy jumped in and helped us to host our 7th grade basketball league. We actually had a scenario last year where it wasn't Sanders, it was Roy Jr. They ran an all West Haven league for us.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
And that's not super appropriate for them to do that. They just kind of did that to help us out, and we're willing to take the repercussions for that, but they really weren't supposed to do that. And so, you know, as that continues to grow, and the fluctuation on the girls' side, about 7 or 8 years ago, we put a focus into the women's side because we felt like softball, girls' basketball wasn't growing. Well, we saw a really serious growth for a little while. We bolstered a lot of teams and a lot of participants. They like bigger teams. But the problem that we have now is, so it kind of fluctuates. When that starts to rise again, which we anticipate that it will, you know, it puts us in a tougher situation even yet again. So
You bring up an excellent point about Roy Junior High hosting basketball for us last year, because we don't actually have any students from West Haven that attend that school unless they're attending out of boundary.
Correct.
Our students that attend any Roy schools we have some that attend Sandridge and some that attend Roy High School, but Roy Junior High is not one of our schools. So
correct.
kudos to them for doing that for us.
And, you know, and to be honest with you, that's something that's a high priority to us. You know, I want you to know that we are constantly working on our relationship with Roy. We have a very good relationship with
Yes.
Roy. And we try to cultivate that because we do feel like it's imperative that we partner together, because we have things that can help them and they have things that can help us. So it's a long-standing partnership that this doesn't affect that. We want to continue to try to create that relationship because we think it's very important. We're taking too much of your time.
Let me
we
just
have
ask.
lots of questions.
Yeah, let me ask another question while you 2 are up here. Regarding the teams, the boys team basketball.
Team league.
This chart shows that we haven't had teams since 2017-18 season, but that's not accurate, right?
Correct.
The last time we had it was 2 years ago?
It was. So we
Coming
had
out
a
of- going into the COVID year was the last year.
Right, yeah, it got canceled actually,
Yes.
in the middle of it, yeah.
well, yeah, right
For the postseason.
right before the very last tournament, it got shut down. That is correct. The numbers aren't there at the time that the chart was created. We didn't have those numbers. They were hidden, but we have since found them, and we can provide them
We have the
when you're ready for them.
2016, 2017 numbers just today, so I wasn't able to update that there.
Yeah.
And the differentiation between the teams in the district and the draft teams. And so we'll get that updated and should shot out to you, by tomorrow with this update.
You know, I think we're filling a gap that they have because those girls that start earlier on the comp teams, you know, there's not a place for people to play that aren't going for high school teams, you know, that just like it and want to play in a league. And so I think there's a lot of them out there, and I think that's giving a service to the community, especially for those, you know, those teams that aren't going to be the killer teams.
And I was gonna say, going on with that, I've actually had a couple different coaches ask me if we could ever run like a team league or a high school aged girls' league.
Right.
And so we have the interest in it. Unfortunately, we don't have the facilities to do it. So, you know, with these gyms, that would open up that opportunity for them.
And not only that, there's another niche that we have never been able to provide, and that is volleyball. Rob's probably experienced this. It's either nothing
Or comp.
And
Or
there's-
travel.
Yeah. And
Lots of
so
travel.
we feel like, you know, we had that opportunity headed our way, and actually, I think Carrie was actually signed up to play in that adult volleyball league, and then we
Go
had to
Carrie.
cancel it.
Yeah.
Awesome.
You know, and so, because they turned Rocky Mountain into a COVID facility, and we don't have any ability to stop that, which we would have a little bit more ability to handle that. But that's a niche that we have never been able to get into, that I think would be vastly popular, because nobody wants to put little Sarah in to a $1,500 program if
Exactly.
you don't like it. So we feel like there's an opportunity to provide a recreation program to find out, do we like this? And it's a niche that we haven't been able to do. There's no possible way for us to do that currently.
So there's no doubt that we need facilities. I mean, we desperately need facilities, and I don't think I think we're all in agreement with that. What we have to decide on is if we're gonna spend $3.5 million on an intangible asset and what we're getting for that $3.5 million.
Absolutely.
So that's the biggest concern, whether we go with the school district or we find other options. So if we were to double in size of our participants right now in just basketball, would we outgrow this new facility?
If we were to take it at the same rate that we are right now, considering that we can facilitate, in other words, we are functioning currently. It is tight, and I don't know how James and Taya did it, to be honest with you, but it is functioning. With the addition of 2 gyms, I absolutely think you could double the program currently.
Okay.
I do.
And now, as far as all other athletics, I mean, we want volleyball or some other athletics. Is there going to be the space for that in these 2 gymnasiums to add additional athletic programs? Or are we going to be tight just taking the overflow from basketball?
I think you'll be tight during key times of the year. But with those facilities, the model that we did last year where we really condensed but still ran a full functioning season, the night games, allows you to really shrink that down, the time from start to finish, where you can open up more time in the fall or earlier time in the spring.
Okay.
So I think you could, and I don't know what the best way would be yet. I think that's something that we have to find out. Do we have it? And then really play with it. What can we maximize on? As we network, you know, with other cities in the URPA and whatnot, one that we have been told is you will never find yourself not using the facility. You will continually run programs. Actually sent me a list of everything that they program in Layton City, and it is unbelievable the amount of use they use in that school. It far reaches beyond basketball. They run so many programs. They have adult pickleball in there during the winter. So there are a lot of dance is one that we don't have on our list, but it actually is.
You better put it on there.
We'll get Kim's dance program on there.
Okay.
But yes, I think that what model do we go with? I'm not 100% sure, because we would really need to look at that and what makes sense, and also maybe talk to our coaches. Do we like that 2-night-a-week model? But it really makes us able to do a lot of things in the early fall into winter, and then the early spring into late spring, early summer. And then, you know, in the summer, lots of opportunities. Indoor youth programs, youth camps. We've done that in the parks where we do a 2-week camp and we do a different sport each day. We would have so many capabilities to do some of the indoor activities that we've never been able to do before. So I really think that as we collectively think, there's going to be a lot of opportunities for us, not even touching into the event side.
Brock, I just had a quick question on you mentioned the summertime. I know this facility is mainly available to us if we do it after, you know, school hours. In the summertime, would we have more availability during the day?
Well, you know, it's a really good question, and we haven't discussed that, but I would say all things are negotiable at the moment. I think that the school district would welcome the idea that maybe from 3 o'clock on, we go into the school. I think they'd absolutely be negotiable.
I think that would be really favorable.
I think it depends on the time of the year and everything, but absolutely, it's a contract, so we'd have to review that.
I think that's an excellent point you bring up.
Yeah, that'd be, you know, really beneficial if we could get some additional use when people are out of school. And to me, I see this as a real benefit because we're using it at the time they're not, and, they're paying the majority of the cost. But if there's a way to get additional use out of it in the summer, I mean, it just makes it that much more palatable for the city.
I absolutely think that'll be.
I think they also look at, their maintenance. They do a lot of maintenance and things like that too in the summertime, but we could work around scheduling. We just have to put some dates to it and figure it out.
Most of the time in the school district in the summer hours, I think they work until roughly about 2 or 3 on their janitorial in the summer. So that's why I threw that 3 o'clock on, because that might be the time where they're like, hey, we're out, you're good.
Yeah.
I think all things could be negotiable there. So
What outdoor athletic programs do we have right now that we're short on facilities?
outdoor?
Outdoor? Oh, we are. That's a really good question. We are tight on baseball. We are tight on flag football. We are both of which I think could be would definitely be utilized with having additional places to play or lights.
We also had some football teams practicing in Roy last year because we didn't have field space due
Yes.
to the schools closing the fields.
Yep, tackle
right?
football practices. We're tight on that.
Well, and that's a
go
good
ahead.
question. Does this include outdoor space as well? In addition to the gymnasium space, it also includes the fields, the
Yes.
baseball fields, the football
We've
fields.
had lengthy discussions with Mr. Zelmer about that as well. There's a lot of grass area. There will be a football field. There will be softball. There will be baseball. All things are really workable within this agreement for us. And I think, do you have that on this? Yeah.
Oh, awesome.
So there's a lot of space there. Obviously, we're getting a little bit of stress relief when Staker on 3500 gets done. And also, we're hopeful with the irrigation project at the country park that we're getting ready to start here in the next week or so, that will relieve a little bit of the stress that he's talking about on those. But that's more of like a very carefully designed practice facility when it comes to the country park. But we are still, our flag program is growing like crazy.
Yeah,
And so, like Nina said, last year because the flag program was so big, we had to practice some of our tackle teams in Roy, Emma Russell.
Emma,
Russell,
yeah.
right.
Well, we actually, in addition to that, we had some of the flag football teams or leagues that West Haven hosted. We hosted at Roy Parks.
Right. I was at some of those.
Yeah, because we just didn't have the field space for them.
So this is really big here. Just looking at this off the top, I see 3 different flag fields that we could use in the fall. And depending on this age that we do, possibly 4 different flag fields just at the junior high, and which is monumental for what we are. And it's also going to help us a little bit to relieve a little bit of the strain that we have on our main tackle football fields. They can only take so much abuse in a year. The fertilizing programs and all that come into play, but one of the things on my mind right now is obviously we don't know where we're going to be with water. And so we have to try to schedule this to be able to maintain. Now, if the country park can come back after last year, then I'm a believer that anything can come back. But we still have to be very careful how we maintain that because it does cost to revitalize fields.
Well, and this is maintained by the school district again, right?
Correct.
So we have all that parking. So again, that was something that I hadn't thought about, was the outdoor space.
Brock, one of the, I don't know if there's any way to get the stats on this, but it seems like that the benefit to the community is even greater than the numbers here that we see, because for somebody like me that's had kids in the program that are not in the program now, I mean, I've benefited from the program even though they're not in the program now. So like, in order to sell this, if we want to, I think if there's a way to, I don't know how you do that, but if there's a way to get those numbers of families in West Haven that have kind of been in the program, you know what I mean?
A percentage instead of
it's a bigger
population.
deal than just what we see here as far as the benefit of the basketball program, for example.
I think in general, it's just expanding our recreation program as a whole, which, like you just mentioned, Carrie signed up for volleyball. She typically doesn't play recreation sports probably at our city, but you're going to see more and more probably involvement if that happens. And so there's a lot of benefit to it, a lot of expansion.
Yeah, I think that, obviously this is coming back to the council for the second time. And the first time one of my main concerns was buying or helping to pay for this facility for 3% of our population. That doesn't make sense to me. But when we talk about expanding our programs and doing a lot more, then I can get more on board with that. And so to see all of these things that you've highlighted that we can do as far as recreation programs and events, I like to see that. And it certainly makes me think twice about this facility. So,
Well, and one thing that hasn't been brought up, and not to take any more time than needed, but it's very beneficial to participants, right? We know how important recreation sports are. You know, he's actually at the school district. He used to be the principal at Fremont, and he told me one time his kids have played in the program, he's coached in the program, his kids have worked in the program, and he said it is a staple in a city to provide a high quality recreation program. It's a staple, and he said something very profound to me because he said it is much more than the kids participating. It's grandma and grandpa coming to games. It's siblings. It's family nights at the ballpark or at the gym. And I think that recreation sports facilitate much more. It's a dad that comes home or a mom that comes home from a long day of work, and they get to go watch their kid participate in an activity that is fun, that brings smiles. Most of the time.
Most of the time.
Hasn't been super fun, right?
Another one.
look, I've never gotten kicked out yet.
But we'll get over that. But I really think it's more than just participant. I think it's a very, very family-oriented thing, and this just helps us maintain a high-quality program, a highly reputable program that people can be proud of in the community, and they want to participate here.
It becomes part of our identity as well, that West Haven has a well-recognized program, so.
Well, thanks for presenting to us tonight. I think it helped us to get this paperwork. Thank you, Matt, for putting this information together as well.
We still want a field trip, though.
We need to discuss
he's
real
gonna
quick,
talk
but we're going
about
to talk
that.
about this, so.
Thank you.
Thanks, you guys.
Just a little summary, and I appreciate Brock and James coming in and addressing some of the questions that the council had. In my mind, we are knocking on the door of being the third biggest city in Weber County, and literally we are beggars when it comes to our indoor recreation facilities. We have to do something. And whether that's going it on our own or doing a partnership with the school, we need to do that, or we just need to say no, because we're one junior high administrator away from not being able to do anything. Just to give you a few updates, Ryan created a spreadsheet. We'll have this ready for the future indication. We really had park impact fees take off in 2020. Over that time, we've accrued almost $4 million in park impact fees. And so we have a 6-year tail to spend those on. And we have some time to do this. It's not like we've got money burning in our pockets. But this is one of those windows of opportunities where we can really get it. As you look at some of these things, the junior high school, it's not our property. I'll let you know. South Ogden actually has it in their contract that they have a 1/12 ownership interest, and that might have been to satisfy that it's a tangible asset, not an intangible. And that could be something we look at. So what I would like to propose with the council is you look over this, and I threw in stuff from Summit County, their Ledges Event Center, really cool space. Is let's go on a tour, and I wanted to get this information before we did that. South Ogden, Farmington, and even Summit County are very amiable to host. It would be during the day, and so I don't know if it's something we could schedule for the whole council to be there, but if we can get a representation of you to go and kind of report back and talk, I'd be happy to set up something next week so we can get there and take a look at it. Some of you have already experienced Farmington, and South Ogden's great. It's not the same. Roy Junior High is the base gym that's what we're going to get. It doesn't have the second gym, but you can see South Ogden and how it is. And actually, we'll show how what they have proposed at this junior high is better than South Ogden because it has direct access and instead of walking through school classrooms, hallways to get those things. So, Nina, it looks like you had a comment.
I was just going to say I would love to be a part of that field trip. So
I'll try to get something set up and just shoot that out and see if we can have some representation on there. As Carrie pointed out, I shot this to you last night, so please dive into it. If you have questions on it, please let me know. These were just a couple examples, and we can look to see what we can do. We're still looking at that first week of March to be able to get back to the school, and so this is a closing window of opportunity, and we just want to make sure, we don't want to rush into it, but we do want to expedite consideration of it. So whatever information you need, please let me know, and we'll facilitate that.
Well, thank you for what
thank
you
you, Mark.
provided. It gives us a lot to look at and think about.
Okay.